That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Jeanne Dielman, 23, Quai du Commerce, 1080, Bruxelles, the 1975 sophomore film from Chantal Akerman, which is considered a cinematic masterpiece. In 2022, the Sight and Sound poll, which is a poll that's taken every 10 years, saw her film rise to the number one spot. Since that poll has been around since 1952, it's only the third film to hold that distinction. Citizen Kane did for, I think, 50 plus years before Hitchcock's Vertigo, and she is the first woman that now has that distinction.
And that list gets published by BFI.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So this is considered the greatest film of all time.
According to a group of, how many people are part of that?
1,700,
yeah.
I think, close to. The premise. A lonely widowed housewife does her daily chores, takes care of her apartment where she lives with her teenage son, and turns the occasional trick to make ends meet. However, something happens that changes her safe routine. This movie is almost 3.5 hours long. I was not prepared, but I think it's very effective, quite the conversation piece. Mm-hmm. We can just tell the story. It's pretty simple. So Jeanne Dielman,
played by the wonderful Delphine Seyrig.
We don't ever even hear her name being said. We just know it because of a letter that's written or that she reads aloud.
Well, it's like she's defined by the address, which the letter addressed to kind of encapsulates that as well.
But the film takes place over the course of 3 days, and we see she is widowed. We find out her husband has been dead for 6 years. In her apartment is her teenage son, whose name we don't even know.
Sylvain.
Oh, that's right.
Which we also find out from the letter.
From the letter. And we just see her do her daily routines. She gets up, does her chores, gets her kid ready for school, runs off to the store to prepare for dinner. She does work as a prostitute. So every afternoon before her son gets home, she takes a trick. And so we see her do that day 1, day 2, day 3. But on day 2, after that trick, she starts to seem a little like discombobulated because we see that she is meticulous at her routine. Like everything is perfectly folded, put away. She seems obsessed with like every time she leaves a room or enters a room, she turns the lights off and on. But after the second day in that trick, she seems a little confused. And on the third day, after she has her trick, she appears to have an orgasm. And after that, she kills that man. Mm-hmm. And the final 10 minutes of the film are her sitting at her dining room table.
With bloody hands.
With bloody hands. And the film ends. So not a lot happens, but there's so much in the little details.
Details that we usually don't see on film. Still don't.
No. So, committing to watching a film this long is quite the feat, but I think it's necessary to really get a sense of this woman's life and the mundane routine nature of it and how that might have led her to crack. So I do think, sometimes I feel like it seems indulgent when filmmakers make such long films. In this case, I did feel like it was necessary. Yeah. Very little dialogue.
Mm-hmm. And what dialogue we do have is also very telling.
Yes. I'm just going to go through my little notes. So on day 1, I didn't know what this movie was like, but it is quite the experience to have these really long extended scenes of someone doing something very basic, like watching people eat, mm-hmm. which is kind of horrifying. Watching her and her son eat at the dinner table. But yeah.
Well, and there's no joy in it. Like all the other thing is like all this preparation, all this meticulousness, and there's no joy.
At all, in anything.
Because that's supposed to be kind of the payoff, right, of making dinner and eating together.
And then during the meal with her son who has returned home from school, they're not communicating. And then all of a sudden it seems like the big event for the evening is that she received a letter from her sister. And so she's going to read it. And I thought it was funny that the contents of the letter felt like something that maybe she didn't need to read aloud to her son, because it's also her sister saying to her, like, you need to find a man. It's been 6 years. I'm sure you're lonely. So the fact that she read it to her son and him not having much of a reaction said a lot about their relationship.
It did, but the jarring relationship that she has with her son before bed that night makes a little more sense because of that letter, because he starts asking her very personal, kind of sexual questions about her relationship with his father, and she says, "Why are you asking that now?" And I think it's because of the letter.
Yeah. And part of what he asked her is, basically, she says, your dad was ugly. And because she is a beautiful woman, the son probably looks like his dad. And then the son's like, well, why did you, like, what was appealing about him? And basically, she's just like, well, he was nice and he was there. This movie to me is a woman's story, and it really feels like it encapsulates what it must have been like for a woman like her during that time in that place to craft a life, try to find some sort of identity, which it seems like this character was not able to, which is what led to her doing what she does in the end, like just cracking. But yeah, super effective. Then on day 2, this is when we see her wake up and her routine of the son sleeps in the living room, so they have like a pull-out couch, and she prepares his clothes for the day. So we see her doing that, shining his shoes. Then we see him get dressed off screen and leave. And then she makes his bed, folds his pajamas, and then starts her day where she leaves the house to go do some innocuous things. Like it appears like she pays a bill, goes to get some food. Something I wanted to mention is the lighting and the time of day were very curious to me in this film.
I think that's on purpose with the cinematographer, yeah.
Because it was very hard to tell what time of day it was. Because it seems like when her son returns home from school, it's nighttime. And even like when the tricks come over.
The tricks seem to come over we're heading into the gloaming, like the evening has fallen by the time they leave, yeah.
But then even when we know it's daytime, her apartment is dark. So it's her turning lights on and off constantly.
In the dining room area, we never see outside the windows, but they're clearly in front of some kind of neon lit sign that is constantly flickering because it's reflected in the cabinet with her curios.
We see her doing innocuous things. So first she, in addition to being a prostitute, she appears to take care of like a neighbor's kid. And take care is loose because the neighbor brings the baby in like I don't know what you call it, like a car seat kind of thing.
Not a bassinet, but
The baby's in a box with a handle, and she takes the baby and just plops it on the table and goes on about her business until the woman returns. But she has an interaction with that woman where the woman's talking and trying to socialize, and Jean is just like, is it Jean or Jean?
Jean.
Jean is like, yeah, okay. Then we see her go to buy like potatoes. We see her do a few things where it's just like she can't even muster up the strength to like share an interaction. A woman on the street meets her and invites her for coffee, and she says maybe next week. The only time we actually see her like being the one communicating is on the 3rd day. She wants to get her son's jacket mended, like a button's missing, and it's an old jacket. And she goes to like 3 different places to find a matching button. And at the 3rd place, she's telling this woman this long drawn out story of where the jacket came from and how when her sister gave it to her son, he was younger, so it didn't fit, but now he's grown into it. I thought that was really interesting. Like why that exchange was the one she chose to communicate.
Well, things are, I think it's showing the phrase, like from the beginning of the 3rd morning, she is like, she's dropping brushes, like clearly she's unraveling. So I think,
so back to day 2 when she has that trick. After that guy leaves, we see that she gets confused about her potatoes.
She's burnt the potatoes, which is probably the only kind of funny scene because she's running around
holding this pot
like she doesn't know what to do. It reminded me very much of kind of the realistic version of the Stepford Wives when Paula Prentice malfunctions.
Well, I think that's perfect because she seemed like a robot that was malfunctioning.
Yeah.
Like an action, or kind of like those delivery robots you see on the street where they hit something that's not maybe what they're programmed to deal with, and they kind of go back and forth. That's what she was doing.
Yeah, and then she has other potatoes and finds out she only has one left, and she's got to go get the potatoes. It ruins the whole evening, ostensibly.
So much of the movie is awkward, but I think one of the most awkward scenes is because dinner was ruined, it's not on time. So when she and her son go to eat dinner the second night, they eat their soup in silence, and then she's like, well, the potatoes aren't done. And this is when it really is exemplified that this lady cannot sit still.
No.
Because she's like, the potatoes need to keep cooking, and she keeps getting up to check and walk back. Also, she wears heels, and they have hard floors. So all you hear is her heels click-clacking. And all I could think was, like, if I were her downstairs neighbor, I'd have to kill her. Like, it's just all day, all night, her pacing back and forth with those heels. But it's during that dinner scene where she's like, well, the potatoes need 2 more minutes. So she's fidgeting. She's like giving her son his like table setting. Like, here, take
Take your napkin.
just like manic about staying busy.
Yes, it is. It is constant movement, but you don't realize until things start, the rhythm's off, that how comforting that rhythm is, just to be alongside her doing it until it's not working anymore. And then that's when the anxiety starts to creep in, watching her do this, and it becomes foreboding.
It's at the end of day 2, the son shares a story with his mom that some boy at school is the one who told him about the birds and the bees. So when he understood what sex was, he tells his mom, that's why I used to have you come, like I would pretend to have a nightmare so you would come lay with me so dad wouldn't have sex with you. Which I thought was really sinister, considering how the film evolves, the fact that he's dead, the fact that she has clearly, based on her sister's letter, not tried. You can just tell from this lady that in the past 6 years that she's been a widow, she probably hasn't had romantic endeavors beyond being a sex worker. And then knowing that the way she describes her husband to her son, who she makes it seem like that's the first time he's ever asked her, like, how'd you meet dad? And she's basically saying he was ugly, but he was nice. And so here we are. It all tells a very clear story of what this character's life must have been like and what drove her to break.
Right. Well, because it's all about, she has found a way, a rhythm of control that works for her.
So day 3, her rhythm's real off, because when she gets up, she doesn't make her son's bed. There's a really long scene where she's making coffee where it just seems like she's stuck.
Well, it doesn't taste good. It's like there's
something's wrong.
Something is definitely wrong.
Then she does her daily shopping, and it seems like her timing's off because she shows up to 2 places and they're not open yet. And she has to wait. And then we see her waiting for maybe like the meat shop to open, and she's just pacing back and like she can't wait the extra 2 minutes. She's fidgeting.
Also on the third day, a really awkward scene is where she tries to sit for a moment in the living room, and just, it's like she's trying to take a moment for herself, but because this film really, on purpose, makes you aware of the passage of time. And it's in that scene where it's just like, my skin was crawling.
Well, even before that, because we see on day 1, she clearly goes to some coffee shop every day and knows the server, and we're told like it's in the afternoon that she goes, and the server knows she just wants her coffee and they bring it. But on the second day she goes, the server's not there. It's like she's already left for the day. And there's another woman sitting in the booth
in her
that
spot.
Clearly Jeanne likes to sit in, and you can tell she's annoyed and she can't even finish her coffee and gets up and leaves. Yeah. But I thought the most grueling scene was on the third day when the neighbor lady brings the baby and the baby is crying. And I'm sure the way it was edited, like the audio is enhanced. Or,
yes.
Like it wasn't that baby actually crying in real time. They dubbed it with something that was just so screeching and loud. And the way Jeanne is reacting to this baby is kind of creepy, because she's like, oh, come on.
She picks it up once.
She picks it up and the baby cries more, and then she puts it down. The baby kind of stops crying. And then she goes back and picks it up and the baby's screeching. And she does it like 3 times.
Yes, it is.
Like, it's almost like she wanted the baby to do that.
Well, I think she's looking for some sense of feeling, perhaps. But I don't know, because she's kind of inscrutable.
I knew we were in trouble on day 3 when she is fidgeting around the apartment and she decides to crack open the curio cabinet and she starts wiping down her little tchotchkes and things. It's like, oh, here we go. This is not going to go well. But then after that, that's when she goes looking for the matching button, da-da-da. And then that's when the third trick comes over.
The buttons are interesting because I think that same morning, her robe that she wears, her son he tells her, your button's undone.
Yeah, she didn't button it up all the way. Like, again, falling apart, unraveling. But yeah, so the third guy on day 3, she has sex with him. And at first, it's really awkward because he's on top of her.
It seems like he's not really moving. It's very claustrophobic.
It is. Well, and then I thought, because I had kind of spoiled the movie for myself when we started it, so I knew someone was going to die. So it almost looked like he was already dead on top of her because he's not moving. But then you see him kind of breathing and kind of thrusting, and then all of a sudden it appears that she's enjoying it and that she may have had an orgasm. But then when they're done and she's sitting in front of her mirror, like her vanity, getting ready, and this guy's on the bed looking at her, and it seems like he's just in the afterglow. And she gets up and grabs her scissors that she had already grabbed before he got there to open up. She had grabbed those scissors she ultimately kills that guy with to open up a package she was sent that was like a negligee. It was more like a muumuu, which I thought was kind of significant, that it was like it seemed like that package was something she had ordered for herself, maybe, like a little treat for herself. And the scissors she used to open that are the scissors she grabs. And she stabs that man in the neck on the bed and just walks into the dining room. Yeah. I mean, it's not graphic in a way, and it's odd that it didn't even feel shocking, not because I spoiled it for myself, but because it felt inevitable that something had to happen. Like, we watched this woman for 3 hours kind of just very routinely do these things that don't amount to much, and it's like, something big is coming. So when she does it, I don't even know how to describe how I felt. It kind of took my breath away, but it felt like a release finally.
Yeah, there's this song I've been listening to called Pain by a band named Boy Harsher, and one of the lyrics is "Pain breaks rhythm," and that's so does pleasure. Like, the pleasure that she experiences breaks her rhythm, and it's like she doesn't know how to handle that. It's also out of her control. Like, her body has experienced something that is beyond her control, and I think she doesn't really know how to process that.
I think I feel like there could be a class on this movie and the different themes, because also her being a sex worker, but of course during a time in a place where if people knew that's what she was doing, it would be a problem.
Oh, for sure.
And so she kind of masks it by being this perfect prim lady who's on top of everything and like no one would suspect. And even the way she handles it, like it's just another one of her chores.
Yeah, it's something that I have to do every day, and in the washing up afterwards and the scrubbing of the tub, it's just like, oh my God.
Yeah, because after day 1, we see her take a bath, and it seems very methodical, and there just is no joy in anything she's doing.
Well, when her son asks her about if she'd want to be with anybody again, and she's like, oh, I wouldn't want to get used to another person. He's like, no, I mean, what if you actually loved somebody? But where would she find, that's the irony of it, like where would she find the time?
Also, if she didn't really love the father of her child, her now deceased husband, I think that question seems kind of like, it made me feel sometimes when people want to like give me advice or like, why don't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And it's like, oh, because that's what you do. Because you want me to be like you.
Right.
Because I see you and I don't want to be like you. And I think how I interpreted him asking her that and her reaction was like, in so many words, she's saying like, I wasn't happy with your dad. I didn't love that man. Like, I just did it because I felt like that was something I was supposed to do. I also got the sense that while she cared for her son, as a mother would, I guess, it almost felt like, I don't know. I don't know that maybe because I don't have a strong idea of what I think feminist means, but I could see someone saying this is a feminist film in the sense that this woman feels like she's trapped by what society thinks she should do.
Yeah, she's still trapped by her son. I mean, she has to get everything she needs to get done before he comes back for the day.
And I really related to this idea of like, I have this life and all these things are happening, but it's like, what if you don't enjoy that? Like, you just, the ball kept going, and now you're at a place where it's like, okay, even if I were given the power to say, you can do anything, what would you do? Well, I don't know. I haven't had the time to think about that. Like, my entire life's been devoted to being a wife, a mother. Like, I still have to take care of this kid. I have to find a way to make money. And the way that I'm choosing to do so is not something that's acceptable. So really, I'm just this, like, she's not even a person. Like, I could see how her character would feel like she's not a person, which makes sense that also, as someone who listens to a lot of true crime stuff, I can see why people get to a point where they commit heinous acts, because it's like, well, who cares? Who cares? So I get convicted of murdering someone? Like, that probably feels stimulating and something different, and maybe that's a way I can get out of this shit. Like,
well, the murder, like we were talking afterwards, it almost feels like that was her way of quitting her job.
yes.
Both as a mother and a sex worker.
Yeah,
I'm done.
I got the sense that as she's sitting there, because it feels like, what, 7 minutes that we're just watching her sitting there after she killed this man. And she has no expression, but I would imagine she feels some relief, some fear, but it's almost like she's feeling something, which she hasn't in a long time. And probably the biggest thing would be relief.
Well, yeah, because the one thing she does is she kind of hangs her head for a second. Like, we don't see her doing anything like that. She's almost expressionless throughout.
Yeah. But you already mentioned the scene prior to the killing. That's when we get an extended scene of her just sitting on the couch. And that made me feel like when it's like having a life that's so consumed by all these responsibilities and then wanting time for myself, but it's never time it's never organic. It's like, oh, well, I have this 1 hour break because this and this aren't happening, or this person's not here. And like in her instance, she has this break before her trick comes, but before she has to start, like after she's done her errands. And so she's trying to do something with it, but she can't, because it's not something you can force. Like, like maybe she needs to learn how to meditate. I don't know, but I really related to her feeling like this is my time for me. But
well, yeah, she feels very relatable. It's just, it's kind of distressing because you're lulled into kind of a comfort of it. It's not unlike watching, driving videos of people just driving around the city. It's like there's kind of a comfort in that monotony, but then it starts to chip away at that. Not very long into it.
She tells her son twice at the dinner table, don't read while you eat, because he brings a book to the table and then she doesn't. So then he puts it down, but then she doesn't engage him. And I thought that was very interesting. Like,
we're just sitting here in uncomfortable silence.
So then you really just want me to sit here and do nothing. But I didn't get the sense that it was a form of punishment. It's almost like she feels like this is what
this time is intended for.
Yeah.
And even if we have nothing to say to each other, because then their ritual extends beyond that, where he goes to the couch and does the reading, she puts the radio on and she's making him a sweater or something, but he's also paying attention to her because she's trying to respond to her sister's letter and she can't, and he's concerned about that.
Right. So I think, like the greatest film of all time, when I think about film and what are my favorites, I think about like vibrant storytelling, being taken to another place, really crafty ways to like visually, like editing and special effects. And I don't know that I think this fits into that package.
Okay.
But I do think that this is a very effective conversation piece.
I think it challenges the notion of what cinema can be.
Sure. But I mean, this feels like, because I was also reading that, of course, the voting panel was primarily or predominantly male, but until
recently,
because they do their list every 10 years. So for this 2022 list, they had included more diversity in gender and I believe race. So that's why we see a few changes. But obviously this one is huge, that this film jumped up from like number 35 to
38, I think.
38 to number 1, which is really cool. And I don't think it's not worthy of being there. I think this movie is almost perfect for what it is. The only little thing that kind of bothered me was that this character is supposed to be like, is supposed to exemplify what a routine life looks like. And there were moments when the actor performing these tasks, it didn't seem seamless. Like the actor was thinking about, oh, I have to open this drawer to pull this thing out and put it back. In the same way that when you see like dancers who it's like, oh, you're thinking about the steps. Like I can see in your face that, like, even though you're performing very well, I can see in your face. It's the difference between two very talented dancers, but one, it's kind of written on their face that they're counting. But not all the time. There are just moments when it didn't feel.
See, I don't know though, because we're only doing 3 days and she starts cracking up technically on the second one. So I don't know if maybe those are hairline fractures that are more, I don't know. But
maybe.
I really liked Delphine Seyrig. She was a feminist and activist. She directed a documentary herself called Be Pretty and Shut Up in 1981, where she interviewed a lot of women and kind of how they're treated in the film industry, including Jill Clayburgh and Jane Fonda. Since she was basically discovered by Alain Resnais during the French New Wave and last year at Marienbad. I mean, she just has such a fantastic filmography, and I always look forward to seeing her. I think the only other thing I've made you watch with her was Daughters of Darkness.
She seems like a really cool person whose stuff I would like. You also told me that she died by suicide.
No, that's the director.
Oh, I'm sorry, the director. That I would like the director, the director's other work, and then you told me that the director,
Chantal Akerman,
that she, after her mom died, she killed herself, which I think is such a great way to go.
She did a kind of a documentary about her conversations with her mother called No Home Movie, and then shortly after that, she killed herself.
Yeah,
she's 65.
But this is exemplary work. I would recommend watching it alone. Maybe like if you find somewhere that's screening it, like on a Sunday during the day, not at night, so that you have something nice planned afterwards.
Yes, for sure.
Like a nice meal. But yeah, just sit and think about it, because I feel like everyone could relate to.
Yes, and then of course she reminded me of Jeanne Dielman, like my grandmother's generation. My grandmother even had a soup tureen, kind of where she stores her money. That's
we didn't
like
even
that.
mention that. Yeah, so she has that soup tureen in the middle of the dining room table, and every time she gets money from a trick, she puts it in there. But that's also the same pot she pulls money out of to give her son for like lunch money. And on the second day, when she starts to kind of crack, she forgets to put the lid back on. But I thought the symbolism of that, the placement of it, how she's kind of meticulous about the dining room table.
She's putting the food on the table.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. But just the way that she moved about her day, like, because I've thought this about many women that I've met that are mothers. It's like, oh, you really don't know how to sit down and not let someone else take care of you.
Well, I think society, especially at that time, made her feel like she can.
Right.
And that's what's frustrating. Like, I felt frustrated for her.
There's a scene where her son's homework, he is going to a Flemish school. And there's he said that...
Oh, because they're in Belgium.
They're in Belgium, and they speak French at home, but he's like, oh, they're not making fun of me at school anymore. My accents... I got my accent work right. And she's like, well, nobody told you had to go to a Flemish school.
I didn't mention the story is set in the early 1970s.
But he's learning through reading poetry. She's quizzing him. He's memorized a poem called The Enemy by Baudelaire. And I found a translation of the last stanza that I really liked.
Go ahead.
That I think fits in with what Akerman's doing with the psychology of this character. Alas, alas, time eats away our lives, and the hidden enemy who gnaws at our hearts grows by drawing strength from the blood we lose.
What would you give this film?
4.
I would give it 4.5 out of 5. Anything else?
No.
Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.
See you.